And there's no turning back now. Round and around like a horse on a carousel. We go, we catch up.
Extremely creepy story time on how my aunt passed away. So a little background information. About 5 years ago, my aunt had gotten pregnant. It was really weird because a few months before she got pregnant, the doctor told her that she would never be able to have kids. And her husband had been trying for years. Well, I think like 2 weeks after the baby was born, it had passed away. And I don't really know why. For some reason, my mom won't tell me. Which is weird, but anyways, after that, my aunt just felt like a lot of things weren't going the way that she wanted them to in her life. So she decided to get closer with God. Well, every Sunday night, we go to my grandparents' house for a family dinner. And while we were there, my aunt starts going on this whole rampage. She said that God's not giving her the answers that she needs, and I don't really know what she means by answers. So my grandparents kick her out because she's acting like a psycho. Well, the same night at 3 a.m. in the morning, we hear a knocking on the door. And lo and behold, it's my aunt. So my mom lets her in because she feels bad and feels like she's the only one that will actually listen to my aunt. So she makes everybody sit at the kitchen table. And she pulls out a Ouija board from her bag, like for part 2. Creepy story time about how my aunt passed away, part 2. So like I said, she makes us all sit down at the kitchen table and she pulls out a Ouija board. She was like, I found out how I can get some answers. I just feel like I need you guys around me for positive energy. And my family is very, very religious. Like, we don't fuck with that shit. But because my mom felt bad for her, she let her use it in our house. But my mom didn't want my sisters and I around that, so she just sent us to bed. Well, the next morning, I wake up and I ask my mom what happened with the Ouija board situation. My mom just said that it was really scary because before she thought it was like a load of bullshit, and she said that her and my dad didn't touch the Ouija board because, like I said, they were very religious and did not mess with that stuff. But apparently, it said for her not to buy a house with the numbers 2815. Well, 2 years later, my aunt got remarried, and her husband ended up having 2 kids. So they bought a new house, and no, it didn't have the numbers on it. One of their kids accidentally shattered the glass door, so they went and got a new one, and it came with those exact numbers on it. 2 days later, the house burnt down and nobody survived. Story time about my psychotic best friend. So we're gonna call this girl Gia. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 9th grade. I saw Gia sitting at this lunch table alone and I invited her to come sit with my friends and I. And after talking to her, I found out that she was a new student and she didn't have any friends. So her and I started hanging out and we became really close. Like, she would come over my house 24/7. Well, my older sister was a grade above us and she would act really weird around her. And by weird, I mean like she would always make fun of me in front of my sister. And weirdly enough, try to cause problems between us. My sister didn't really like her. She thought that she was weird. But because she was my friend, she was being super nice to her. Well, like a month later, she started trying to become best friends with my sister. Like any conversation she would have, I would be like, oh, do you want to come over? She would be like, no, sorry, I'm hanging out with your sister today. And I would go home and I would be like, hey, are you hanging out with Gia today? And my sister would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like for part 2. Part 2 about my psychotic best friend. So like I said, my sister was like, no, what are you talking about? So at this point, I'm thinking, oh, this girl's really weird. But it gets even worse. She comes over my house one day to hang out with me and goes in my sister's room the whole time. My sister dyed her hair black, so what does she do? She dyes her hair black too. The obsession was like really fucking weird. Anyway, so the one night that Gia's over, yes, I still had her over after this because I didn't think it was really weird at the time. My sister had her boyfriend over and they were in the living room watching a movie, and the whole time Gia is begging me to go in the living room and watch the movie with them. So I'm like, fine, whatever, we'll do that. We go into the living room, we all sit on the couch, and my couch is kind of small, so like we all had to squish. So she sits her ass right next to my sister's boyfriend. Well, my sister's boyfriend got up and started freaking the fuck out. Well, turns out that Gia was trying to touch him under the blanket. So I told her to leave. The next day, I got a whole paragraph of her saying that she just wanted to be like my sister because she never had an older sister. Story time about the scariest night of my life. A lot of background information. So the one weekend, my sister and I decided that we were going to go to my stepdad's. And her best friend was going to come also. I was around 13 at the time. Well, my stepdad and my mom had been broken up for about a few months. But my dad was okay with us going to our stepdad's because he had been with our mom for around 7 years and he's always been good to us. And my stepdad's was 2 hours away. So fast forward, we get to his house and my sister and her friend wanted to go to a party. Now, me being older now, I knew that they didn't want to bring me because they were around 16 and I was only 13, but I still tried to tag along. Well, they weren't really talking to me or anything, and I hadn't seen my mom in almost a year. So I told my stepdad that I wanted to go and see her, which was a super big deal because she absolutely hated my stepdad. and she didn't want him around us. And by the way, she lived like 5 minutes from him. So if she found out that we went all the way up there to see him and not her, she would have flipped. So he drives me to my mom's house, like for part 2. Part 2 about the worst night of my life. So before I got to my mom's house, I called her. And I pretty much just told her that I was with my stepdad and I wanted to come see her. Like I said, she lived 5 minutes away. So as soon as we pull up, she walks outside. And she starts screaming at my stepdad. She's like, those are my kids. You're not allowed to see them, blah, blah, blah. Even though my dad had full custody and he could decide who we could and couldn't see. So after that, we walk in the house. She isn't saying anything. And this house is pretty much like a trap house. There was a knife holding the door shut. Not a kitchen knife, like an actual knife that you stab people with. She's like, you can sit down, make yourself comfortable. And I didn't want to sit down because I saw needles everywhere and I just saw a rat crawl under the couch. So I was like, no, I'm fine. And then she was like, sorry, not everybody can be rich like you. Which, just to make clear, I'm not rich. I just knew that she was doing drugs with her boyfriend in that house. After that, she pulls the knife that was holding the door shut out and points it right at me, like for part 3.
My best friend's boyfriend starts DMing me on Instagram. He confesses that he had a crush on me when we were in college together, and I told him that I did too. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. From that day on, he would DM me every single day and we would just flirt back and forth. I started feeling really guilty and I told him one day I can't do this anymore. That's when he told me he also felt guilty and that the best thing was for us to stop talking, so we did. I was so sad. A few weeks passed by and my best friend asked me if she could have the apartment all to herself because she's planning a romantic dinner for him. I said yes, but I felt so jealous. I left the apartment because I realized that I was so in love with him. I went to the supermarket and ate a whole pack of Oreo cookies and went to the movies. I get a text message from my best friend asking me to come home immediately. My stomach sank and I thought she had found out. When I get there, she's crying and she says that he broke up with her. I asked if he said why, and she said because he was in love with another woman. My stomach sank again. I was there with her the entire night while she cried, knowing her boyfriend left her because of me. Part 3 is up.
You guys are not even gonna believe it when I say that when I was 15, I almost became a stepmom. Yes, we did skip a few chapters, so let's start from the beginning of the book. Back in the day, in middle school, there was this new bad boy in town. And for the purpose of the story, his name will be Dean. So Dean was a little bit older, but he would date some of the middle school girls. A little sus, I know, but even beyond this man had a bad reputation. And I did my best to stay away from guys like him. That was until the second quarter of my sophomore year in high school happened. And while my mom and I were walking around Walmart looking for a pair of jeans, we ran into Dean's mom. Well, our mom started talking and bonded really well. And that's when his mom suggested that we would be a really cute couple. She talked about how much he's changed, so I went ahead and added him on Snap. And the insane thing is that we actually started having really good conversation. Like deep existential ones. But one night I was bored and started to creep on his Instagram account. And I came across a gender reveal photo. This man had a whole son on the way. And I accidentally liked the photo and that's when I got a text from Dean saying, go ahead, ask me.